Welcome to the Electoral Road Show with Analyst Wayne Sussman and me, Steyn. Morning, Wayne.
Good morning, Chris. Great to be speaking to you again.
Let us start with the Inkatha Freedom Party on the march.
Yeah, it was a very big night for the Inkatha Freedom Party. We'll remember that in our last few conversations, we've said that they've had a good start to the year. And last night, there were 3 by-elections in KwaZulu-Natal. All 3 took place in the Zululand district. Yes, it's a traditional stronghold of the IFP. But in some of these areas we're going to explore, the National Freedom Party, the NFP, were the party in control. The other ward was ANC controlled. And then you, of course, also have Umkhonto weSizwe Party, MK Party in the mix. So let's start off in Nongoma, where the IFP actually a few weeks ago won a by-election off the National Freedom Party. Just to take one step back, the reason for all these by-elections is because there's a lot of dissatisfaction with the NFP leadership over the leader's desire and wish to remove the party from the Government of Provincial Unity. And councillors just generally unhappy with Ivan Barnes's leadership. And there's, of course, some factionalism. So in Ward 7, in a very rural part of Nongoma and Zululand, this is the first one we'll look at. The IFP went from 38% to 55%, winning well over more than half of the vote in a very competitive ward. Umkhonto weSizwe coming in second at 21%. I think they would have liked to have done a bit better. And then the National Freedom Party, the party which used to govern here, falling, Chris, and I'm going to say these numbers slowly, from 53% to 13%. That's a 40 percentage point drop. It's a dramatic collapse for a party which used to govern in this ward. And then the ANC had some growth here, but they were only in 4th place with 9%, up from 5%. So the IFP winning this Ward 7 in Nongoma. And then we go look at another ward in Nongoma, and here also very rural. And this was a very tight race the last time between the IFP and the NFP. Here the IFP growing from 37% to 47% to win their second consecutive ward off the NFP on the night. And in the last few weeks, their third consecutive by-election off the NFP in Nongoma over a very short period of time. Here, Umkhonto weSizwe actually did well, Chris, getting 32% of the vote. They'll be happy with that. And then way down in third place, falling from 37% to 8%. That's a 29 percentage point drop, a massive drop in support for the National Freedom Party. And here also the ANC, while they grew in that other ward, their support declined from 24% to 8%. So the IFP totally on the march in Nongoma, but their night got better. There was another ward in the AbaQulusi area, which is, of course, near, this municipality encompasses the Vryheid area, the town of Vryheid. And this was an ANC ward. And here the IFP, listen to these numbers, they went from 46% to 63% of the vote. That's an emphatic victory. The ANC, the party which used to rule here, Chris, falling from 52% to 20%. That's a huge drop in support. And Umkhonto weSizwe in a distant third place. So to cap off the KwaZulu-Natal results and Zululand in particular, a great night for the IFP. But just one big word of caution, Chris. Yes, these are great results for the IFP. But this suggests that they are going to, and we've been saying that all along, that they're going to have a good local government election. But we still don't know how well they'll do in eThekwini and the Umgungundlovu district, which is around Pietermaritzburg, because that's where most voters in KwaZulu-Natal are. But right now, in the very rural parts of KwaZulu-Natal, the IFP are doing brilliantly.
Let's go to the Patriotic Alliance. They had another good by-election night.
Yes, and they've won another ward off the ANC in the Sarah Baartman district of the Eastern Cape. We've discussed the Sarah Baartman district quite a few times, particularly the Kokama municipality and also around the Kocha municipality, Jeffreys Bay. This by-election was in the Dr. Beyers Nordia municipality, which is around which is now called Robert Sobukwe Town, formerly known as Graaff-Reinet. And here, the Patriotic Alliance had a big win. They didn't even feature the last time there was an election here in 2021, and they've won here with 40% of the vote, Chris. The DA were in second place with 34%, down from 41%. The ANC, who used to run this ward, falling from 46% to 20%, a huge drop in support. And the Freedom Front, they don't contest many by-elections, falling from 11% to 6%. And again, we've discussed this term before, Chris, very important when we look at elections, differential turnout. In the area of Asherville, which is where most of the voters in the ward are, in Robert Sobukwe Town, formerly Graaff-Reinet, there was a 69% voter turnout. In other places like Aberdeen, it was a much lower turnout. In other parts of the ward, it was a much lower turnout. But the Patriotic Alliance, as we've seen time and time again, they are able to turn out voters in their stronghold. This is a traditional ANC area. The PA won this area with 58% of the vote. This is where most of the voters are. And just on that incredible performance in the Asherville part of the ward, the PA were able to make history by winning their first ever ward councillor, getting their first ever ward councillor elected in Dr. Beyers Naudé. And again, this is a continuation of the theme that in rural areas of particularly the western part of the Eastern Cape, much of the Northern Cape, and of course rural areas in the Western Cape, the Patriotic Alliance are a real force to be reckoned with. They'll be delighted with this victory.
Okay, lastly, the African National Congress.
Well, it's been terrible up until we look, because they've lost a seat in AbaQulusi and in Dr. Beyers Naudé. But we know that we have to pay attention to metropolitan areas. A lot of people are writing the ANC off in metropolitan areas. Well, we had a by-election in Buffalo City, in the Kids Beach, Solonanka area in Buffalo City, a huge, expansive part of the ward on the outskirts of Gompo, previously Buffalo, East London. And here the ANC grew from 68% to 80%, the EFF holding steady at 12%. I must add that the DA were not on the ballot here, but there was still quite a high turnout. The DA came second here last time with 14%, so that might explain why the ANC grew so much, but the ANC is growing here, not the EFF, and the other parties below it hardly featured. The ANC will say to its supporters that if we can do this in Ward 32 in Buffalo City, we can probably do it in other areas, in other metropolitan areas across the country. That was the ANC's best result of the night. Then we go to a traditional ANC seat. This is the area in the Winnie Madikizela-Mandela municipality around the Bazana area in the Alfred Nzo district in the northern part of the Eastern Cape. Other towns there are Matatiele, etc. The ANC holding steady at 63%, down 2 percentage points from 65%. Now, Chris, what was interesting here is the party which came second. There was a local party which ran here before and got 22% of the vote. They didn't run this time. So when a big party who used to run doesn't run before, you expect those votes to go elsewhere. So it was the South African Communist Party which came second with 12%. This is definitely the best result you and I have ever analyzed on BizNews Radio, on the Electoral Road Show. They'll be happy that they got into the double percentage figures, and maybe because often when you and I have discussed them, they're getting 1% of the vote, 2% of the vote. Here they got into the double percentage figures. The African Transformation Movement was third with 11%, and EFF was fourth with 9%. But the ANC, rock solid they remain rock solid beyond Nelson Mandela Bay and beyond the Sarah Baartman district in the Eastern Cape. And those were the 6 by-elections, Chris.
Thank you very much, Wayne. That was Wayne Sussman, elections analyst, with me, Steyn, on the Electoral Road Show. Have a good night, Wayne.
Thank you, Chris. I hope I wasn't my fluid best.
You're always sharp. Bye.
Thank you.